Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher. 13-game slate on the docket. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the slates. We are not going to do the NBA Injury Report Analysis Show tomorrow for just the one-game slate. We're going to take that day off, a little bit of day of rest for a team that's been working a lot of hours over the holidays and whatnot. So we're going to take that one off. Premium content stuff we will still have. We'll have a Showdown specific Establish the Show tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern with Mike Gallagher and Chris Lafagas making his debut. Mike, 13-game slate. We got matchups done already. How are you feeling?
Doing good. Yeah, I got matchups done last night, and got a little hike in. Apparently, too long of a hike because kind of sat down and we've been talking some stuff over. Should be super cool. So excited to talk through all the slate today.
Yeah, there is a lot of injury information to get through, as you would expect on a 13-game slate. So let's get to it. Let's start with some of the questionable tags. First, in Atlanta, where DeAndre Hunter is still questionable. And Bogdan Bogdanovic makes his debut on the injury report. That's not out. He's listed as doubtful. They're hoping for maybe later this week his return. What's your read on Atlanta, who also ruled out Justin Holiday due to health and safety protocols as well? So their thin wing rotation perhaps being tested without Holiday, and maybe we'll see without DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Hunter. Didn't really see what happened to him there. It's a hip soreness thing. He's generally a guy who has a lot of knee injuries, so definitely a chance he sits. I think obviously if he's sitting, especially without Justin Holiday, we could see quite a bit of AJ Griffin, who played really well when they called upon him. Really good, pretty good matchup against a team that doesn't protect the perimeter, so he'd be someone that could be interesting. I do like the guards today for the Hawks, but yeah, getting a little thin if Hunter can't go. So we'll see if those minutes could really get elevated for Griffin.
Yeah, and Trent Forrest has gotten in the rotation recently above Aaron Holiday. I assume without Justin Holiday that they might have to go back to Aaron Holiday. Is there any other? I mean, can Vit Krejci? Like, what does the back end of this rotation look like?
Yeah, they'll probably play both guards. I think they could get away with it. I think they're probably going to see a little bit. We'll talk about the Orlando side, but I think they can afford playing two guards. I mean, they basically start 2-point guards anyways, so I think they're okay playing them together and giving up a little bit of size in the backcourt. The front court, not so much. You don't want to give it too much size, but I think Orlando, which we can get to next, they're going to play a little bit smaller than we've been accustomed to.
Yeah, let's get to Orlando, where Mo Bamba is questionable with the back spasms again. We saw him miss last game, and they started Bull at center. They did not elevate Mo Wagner, who we thought could potentially start in that situation. Mo Wagner's minutes actually came down in that next game against Brooklyn. They're without Wendell Carter Jr., Chumo KK, Jalen Suggs, but they get Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony back. So a lot of added guard depth back for Orlando tonight. What do you expect that means for the Magic rotation tonight, with or without Bamba?
I think they might just bring Bamba off the bench regardless. I mean, the guy's had a lot of injuries. He did kind of get close to playing in the last one, so I think they would probably go small, especially since you need a little bit more ball pressure against the Hawks. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start Cole Anthony's return. Markelle Fultz is going to have a crazy minutes cap on him. Not as far as specifically today, but I think it's going to be a very prolonged minutes cap where we're going like multiple weeks here and still dealing with a minutes cap because it took him over a month. Different injury, ACL, but this is taking him forever to return. He was supposed to be around opening day. It's very Middleton-like, but I think Bull's minutes are going to be really high. I like the matchup for him too as well, but we'll see RJ Hampton mostly go away. They do trust Cole as a ball pressure guy. Fultz, not so much. That's something that we'll see. So I think Cole definitely gets to start. Markelle behind him to lock up probably most of those 48. We've seen Franz play the pseudo point guard role with Gary Harris, quote unquote, starting there. I would expect that to happen. And I expect Powell to run the offense a ton. A lot of quotes from Mosley saying they were happy with how he orchestrated the offense. Their defense had some issues at times, but they seem pretty happy with Powell. Big minutes, led the team in ball handling last game. So I think Powell, even with the point guards returning, probably affects more Franz than it does to Powell.
So your thought there is essentially that we will see Caleb Houston slide out of the starting lineup for Cole Anthony in the same starting lineup that we have with or without Mo Bamba, with Bamba maybe taking Mo Wagner's role in the second unit if he is back.
I think so, yeah. I think that makes sense.
Okay. Let's move on to Cleveland. No Jared Allen tonight.
One thing to add really quick, I thought Mosley seemed pretty happy with his team's play. They just kind of let it get away from them. Where 2 games ago when they were in kind of a similar situation with guys being banged up, he seemed like he was pretty satisfied because he's been stuck on this big lineup for a while, and it just seemed like he was somewhat satisfied with getting away from it here in the spot.
All right, let's move over to Cleveland. No Jared Allen tonight. He's still out. Lamar Stevens listed as questionable here. They're still without Kevin Love as well. What are your thoughts on Cleveland and how they continue to deal with the absence of Jared Allen?
Yeah, matchup really important to note here with Joel Embiid on the other side. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to Robin Lopez, who basically, as you like to call it, the Bruce Bowen role, getting the start and not doing much with that. But so I'd expect Robin to probably start, eat 5-10 minutes to start at the half, and then shuffle in Mobley. Mobley has guarded big Embiid although no one's like Embiid. Yeah. So I expect him to pick up a little bit of that matchup, just take a little bit off of him. So I think that's how they started. Dean Wade, will shift up. So you're essentially sliding. I think they would slide Okoro out. There's not too much pressure on the ball, despite how Shake Milton's been shooting the lights out. D'Anthony Melton's been playing well too. So I would expect them to start that way with Garland, Mitchell, Dean Wade, Mobley, and Robin Lopez. But Robin Lopez wouldn't be an option.
Jaylen Brown questionable with this neck stiffness. He missed the last game. We thought it was maybe a little bit more of kind of back-to-back situation because they had sat Tatum the night before. But Jaylen Brown still on the injury report here with the Q tag. Any thoughts on his availability tonight?
Don't know. So it's worth noting that we saw Tatum and Horford get rested more or less. Tatum did get an injury designation for an ankle injury, which he suffered multiple games before. So it was definitely a rest situation, but they're listing him. So this is a little bit different situation. I think he's going to play, but I'm just saying don't treat it kind of like the ones we've seen. So we'll see. Expecting them to probably start small. If Brown can go, I think they're pretty comfortable with this multiple guard lineup, especially when there's so much small ball handling kind of guys on the outside, and namely Hero and Lowry. So I think they would start, if Brown can go, I think they would bring the Derek White lineup back in there. Obviously, if Horford's returning, he would start, pick up most of the Bam stuff, would be sitting on the perimeter a lot against the zone, I'd say, because he's not too much good in doesn't too much good in the dunker. But I'm expecting Brown to go.
All right. The Heat on the other side of this, we've got a ton of questionable tags that I believe a bunch of them got upgraded to be expected to play. Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Tyler Hero, Haywood Highsmith, Nikola Jovic. What are your thoughts on who the Heat have available? Still Jimmy Butler listed as out.
Yeah, they're the Heat fake Qs, right? We found out that they're all basically expected to play. So I would expect everyone to really, who matters, be available. I don't think Jovic was really as much of a shot to play more than a couple minutes. Highsmith to the same degree because they've got most of their wingish depth back. So would expect a pretty similar starting lineup with pretty good minutes. Tyler Hero coming off a triple-double with massive minutes. I'm curious to see how he fares in this matchup because he gets really exploited against a team that's very precise with offensive ball movement. So I could see Hero, struggling defensively. I don't know if they have enough depth without Jimmy to cut his minutes down, but something I'm curious to see how Spell would handle it if it gets really bad.
Yeah, they definitely have depth in number of bodies. They don't have a lot of depth in shot creation and scoring, which is really the issue that they've struggled with. Big win for them over Atlanta last time out. Dylan Brooks, questionable for Memphis tonight. Desmond Bane is still out. So we could see some potential really limited depth options on the wings for Memphis tonight. What's your read on Dylan Brooks, who often finds himself on the injury report?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he got hit in the leg late. I don't think he checked out, if I remember. Haven't heard anything from Jenkins. Don't really hear anything from Jenkins. The reporters don't really ask him any injury stuff, but that's beside the point. Actually, should add, I didn't hear anything from Jenkins because the PR people forgot to turn his mic on. So that's why I didn't hear anything. But we'll see. Obviously, if he doesn't play, they are real thin. I think they view Roddy as more of a wing. I wouldn't be shocked to see Tyus Jones start. I think that this is kind of dependent on Jaden McDaniels because Jaden McDaniels is so good at pressuring the ball that I think they may want another ball handler there. So I think that makes some sense. But if they don't and Jenkins isn't really a guy who likes to think outside the box like that. So I think Roddy would have the inside track to start. Laravia also doubtful, so that makes it a little bit easier to make that call. But yeah, we could see just a ton of John Morant, especially if McDaniels doesn't go. I mean, it is just wheels up for Morant with big usage coming his way.
Yeah, Jay McDaniels, questionable. There's no Taurean Prince, no Jordan McLaughlin, and now no Karl Anthony Towns. The Wolves are really struggling. They've lost 3 in a row. They now are playing without Cat and against the Grizzlies team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year. Who starts in place of Cat and who really benefits the most here in the absence of Cat?
I think it's slow-mo. We've seen Finch go. He was really kind of gun shy at putting the slow-mo Gobert stuff in earlier in the season, but he's kind of warmed up to it lately, namely because Taurean Prince has been hurt. So I think that makes sense for them to start that way. And mention the McDaniel stuff. They need ball pressure, man. So I don't think they feel comfortable putting Anthony Edwards on the ball. So I would assume Austin Rivers gets his start. We'll see if they go to Naz Reid. Considering the matchup with 2 bigs, I wouldn't be totally shocked to see them go Naz Reid. I'm sorry, Naz Reid in the spot, just to combat Jaren Jackson and those guys, because they've run together a little bit. He spaces the floor, so you don't have as much spacing concerns. But I think Slow-Mo is the pretty heavy favorite here. It's not like he's too short anyways. And it's not like Jaren Jackson is that kind of a big anyway. So I would expect them to start Noel probably playing a decent bit. They definitely need more offensive creation without Cat now, especially when Cat would be staggered away in the second unit to have Noel. So he could take on a really big scoring role coming off his big game. So his minutes should be pretty safe. And obviously their offense is going to really have to funnel through D'Lo and Ant. Ant's coming off a pretty good game, starting to play a little bit better. His fitness has looked better after having the Popeyes chicken talk and all that stuff earlier in the season. So think that covers most of it.
Yeah, if Naz Reid were to start, I would expect Nathan Knight to operate as the primary backup big there in kind of a more normal big rotation that we've seen from them. And would note that just, to this point in the season, relatively small sample, but without Karl Anthony Towns on the floor, Rudy Gobert and D'Angelo Russell have actually seen their fantasy point per minute production decrease without Karl Anthony Towns on the floor, and Anthony Edwards has seen a very big spike in his production without Karl Anthony Towns on the floor. So for what it's worth, let's move over to the Nuggets, where Bones Highland got a questionable tag once again, but we did get a follow-up report that he's expected to play. No Michael Porter Jr. and no Jeff Green still leaves the front court depth a little bit shakier. It's resulted in more of Vlatko Konchar and also more Zeke Naji. Do you expect that to continue to be the case even with Bones Highland back tonight?
Yeah, it should be a pretty similar situation. Definitely need a lot of Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with the 2 ball handlers on Houston running the situation back. So yeah, it should be, Ish Smith getting cut down significantly. Ish was great. Ish got the defensive player of the game afterwards. So they might see a little bit of overlap. We've seen Bones run with Jamal sometimes. So they're okay using the multiple guard lineup. Should note Jamal Murray looks very, very good. And Malone noted he's getting a little bit closer, said, possibly Christmas where he's feeling 100%. But bringing in Bones is going to affect Ish a lot. And then it could affect trickling down to Devon Reed. We saw them play a little bit bigger. We saw a little bit of Zeke Naji, who wasn't really projected in the rotation according to Mike Malone. He said he kind of worked in there because of the way the game was going. So that was kind of interesting to see. And he played great. He really helped put the game away in the second half. But
that is an interesting note, just because he kind of benefited from Aaron Gordon getting into foul trouble. No Bones Highland that game. He seems the one that, like, if they did want to play Ish more, he seems the one that would be the most vulnerable. It seems like Konchar is pretty steadily ahead of him right now. And so just an interesting note there in terms of how they could play big versus small and how that could impact rates as well for the rest of the team. You play more Ish, crunches the assist rate for everybody. You play more Zeke, it might crunch the rebound rate a little bit for everybody.
Okay. They're both going to get, I think Bones, it's a very funky fit because the second unit offense is so predicated on that Bones DJ pick and roll. So bringing that element back, adding Ish, who was running the offense a ton, even when Bruce Brown was out there, as Claff and I know, who took some Bruce Brown assist stuff. But that's a good point.
All right, let's move to some of the doubtful out tags. Ben Simmons listed out today. We haven't seen a lot of, because of the different reasons Kyrie has missed games this year, we haven't seen a lot of KD and Kyrie without Ben Simmons. And we had just started to see Brooklyn's rotation condensing a little bit. And now here goes Ben Simmons. So how do you think the Brooklyn rotation is impacted by the absence of Ben tonight?
Yeah, I think they're going to be. So the matchup's kind of important to note here with Beal and Kuzma. I think that they really like Seth Curry, so they don't have too much size. And we saw Seth just light it up and pick up minutes down the stretch, a couple games ago. But yeah, I think they start that. They've been starting Joe Harris, so I think they probably start that way. So it's Kyrie, Joe, Royce O'Neal, Kevin Durant, and then Nick Claxton. But I think there's a very good chance that Seth starts because I don't think they need extra size. And Denny Avdija is not a threat on the other end, so they could definitely kind of hide Kyrie and Seth together in the spot. So yeah, it's obviously gonna be one of the two. I don't think there's any chance to go back to the Sumner stuff that was going there because Seth is playing better, Harris is playing better. Sumner's kind of been non-existent. I think they want to just make sure those guys are a little bit more solidified. So just things have kind of changed since Ben went down. So I feel pretty confident that it'd be one of those two guys.
Yeah, if it was Sumner, I think the only reason they would be doing that would just be to trying to diversify the rotations with the mix of offense and defense. That's the only thing that I could think of that they would potentially lean on in that situation. Should note that without Ben around, obviously, it improves. When you think about the things that Ben does pretty well, it improves guys who are looking to get rebounds, looking to get assists. Royce O'Neal, one of those guys who I think benefits quite a bit from Ben Simmons' absence. Nick Claxton's minute ceiling obviously benefits a ton as well. And Kevin Durant, whose rebound rate has been down a little bit this year, should benefit there too. On to more outs. Right before the show, the Thunder dropped the news that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will not be playing tonight. Not a big surprise given they're playing San Antonio. You always worry about Oklahoma City when you get into some of these games against the really weaker opponents because sometimes they do funky things. How do you expect them to react in the absence of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander tonight?
Yeah, so we know part of this. We know that Josh Giddey's going to start at point guard. That's the easy part. The rest is the other easy part is Lou Dort's going to start. The rest of it is tricky, and you have to think about the matchup and the amount of ball hand. Like, who do you have to defend and how? So they've got how are they going to score? They're going to score with Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. They don't have to worry about Pirtle anymore. So I think they're going to need multiple wing defenders here. Again, you got Dort. So I think they're going to start Aaron Wiggins, Dort, Giddey, and they don't have a big four anymore. Sohan's not really anyways. I think we could talk about this other side. I think they actually might start small because they like Romeo. Actually, I take that back. I think they're going to probably start KBD. So they have KBD. You don't need size there. So I think Jalen Williams starts. And then, not a very impactful center. We'll talk about that in a second. So I think they could start Poku there. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl was really important for post defense in the last game. So they don't need the post defense here. So I think it's going to be, long-winded way of saying Giddey, Dort, Wiggins, not confident in that. It could definitely be Trey Mann. I just think they need a little bit more size at 2 through 3. Jalen Williams and Poku. So again, it's OKC. We've seen Mark Daigneault consistently change his second half starting lineup. I think he's done it maybe like 3 times where he hasn't done it. So very, very fluid, very dicey, but this adds a big ceiling to a lot of players. This Spurs team is real bad. So Giddey is just chilling here. Could see an explosion game from him. They do not have anybody that could defend on-ball guys now that you've been using Sohan in that role. Probably see a little bit of Langford. We can talk about him in a second. But just a really strong spot for just rates to just skyrocket with SGA out of the picture for today.
Yeah, and I'd note the one thing that I'd feel pretty confident about, I think it's a max 1 in the starting lineup of Jalen Williams and Trey Mann. I would be really surprised if they started both of those guys because I think you want one of their ball handling in the second unit when you're staggered away from Giddey. On the San Antonio side, no Pirtle, no Jeremy Sohan. We did get news that no Josh Richardson. We did get news that Romeo Langford and Keita Bates-Diop are expected to play. People in the chat are wondering about, in the matchups, Colin, you mentioned a chance that Zach Collins doesn't start. You just reiterated that here. How confident are you in that position, and who do you think are the most likely starters for the Spurs tonight?
I'm not confident at all. I'm just going on the fact that I know Zach Collins didn't play when they started Gorgie Jang, but Seemed like Pop was relatively satisfied with that. Zach Collins can play the 4 and the 5. You're kind of short 4s. So I think it makes sense just to fill that way. I'm not confident. I would not be surprised at all if it's Zach Collins starting. So yeah,
But you
I
think
think Zach Collins.
But you think it's one of
But
Zach Collins? You think it's one of Zach Collins or Gorgie Jang that are
yeah,
the starters there? Okay, yeah.
yeah. Who would be the other candidates? Bessie?
I don't know. I didn't know if you were talking about them starting super small or like I didn't know what the lean was.
No,
there.
they're gonna need it. They're gonna need it. Well, without Gade, yeah, I think they start. So they don't want to put Keldon and Vassell in defensive responsibilities. So I kind of think they may start Langford, and then give him the Giddey assignment. Pop really likes his length for on-ball defense. Certainly need the length against a larger point guard in him. So I'm kind of leaning that way. So I'm leaning Trey Jones, who's been playing a lot better lately.
Yep.
Great matchup. Romeo getting point guard assignment. Vassell, Keldon. Mentioned you don't need a lot of big size on the 4 spot. It's fine if they put Poku at the 4, which is certainly possible. And then Collins or Gorgie Jang. But yeah, I'm just going on the fact that Pop is kind of stubborn. He went with Jang before, so I think he would go that way again, and maybe wants to keep Collins in that role, especially if guys had consistent injury issues.
Yeah,
and they may not want to up his minutes anyway. So just kind of, I didn't really even dig into it, so I wasn't confident. But
yeah,
it could definitely be Collins.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. The other thing with Collins there is, Gorgie, you can run stuff a little bit through, but Collins is a little bit more of an offensive hub, which they kind of need in the second unit. They do stagger Vassell and Keldon a decent bit, but this first unit has a little bit more offensive punch than the second unit. So that might be a consideration as well alongside that. All right. Pels. No CJ McCollum. He went downgraded from questionable to out. No Brandon Ingram still. No Najee Marshall, who was ruled out as well. We're spending a decent bit of time trying to figure out Pelicans minutes, and they're starting to get a little bit shorthanded. They did get Kyra Lewis back last game in terms of being available, but they said they didn't know if he would play. I don't know if he's somebody they might need to use. They might need to dip into a little bit more. Jackson Hayes is a guy they might need to dip into a little bit more tonight because things are getting a little bit tighter for them. What are your thoughts on what the Pels look like tonight in this matchup against Toronto? That is always that weird combination of big and small that Toronto likes to play.
Yeah, matchup's so tricky here. You need so much to beat the Raptors. You need somebody who could beat them at the basket. That's Valanciunas. Minutes have been getting wrecked. Obviously, they have Zion who could do that as well. But you need spacing. They give up a lot of spot-up plays. Alvarado does kind of everything. And the fact that they're missing Najee Marshall, who overlaps with Herb not too often, but in this spot, I think he would have overlapped because they need just size and ball pressure a lot. So I think Alvarado could play a little bit more, and I think he could be more of a spacing role because we saw Zion just run the offense in a matchup where it suggests he should run the offense because OKC can't contain large, imposing, paint-crushing big guys like Zion. He's like the perfect type for him to smash, and only scoring 23 is a little bit of a disappointment. But yeah, definitely going to be starting the same lineup. We'll see if they go away from Valanciunas because the Raptors don't defend the rim all that well. Rebounding, they defend rebounding very well, but as far as guys who could really put pressure on the rim, they don't have Koloko producing it. So definitely expecting a similar rotation. Curious to see how Dyson Daniels can fit. He's been very spotty shooting wise, but he's a type of player you need really on the defensive side because you just want length, somebody who could slow down Fred VanVleet because OG Anunoby, I'm pretty sure, is going to get the Zion assignment. So, their guards are going to be asked to pressure the ball with VanVleet bringing it up. So I'm sorry, I meant to say Herb guarding Siakam. Sorry about that. So I'm getting all mixed up with my matchups here. But yeah, so they just need a little more ball handling pressure since Herb's not going to be guarding the point guard, although it's going to be Siakam runs the offense a ton. So sorry if I was all over the place there. That was if you guys followed me. If not, I could sum it up there.
The other thing that I'd note is the matchup is tricky in the sense that Valanciunas is a path to create a lot of offense and offensive rebounding, but defensively could get isolated and switched onto and taken advantage of in isolation with some of the smaller Raptors lineups, which would mean better situation for Larry Nance. So there's a lot of moving parts here where I kind of think if Jonas Valanciunas gets off to a good start, then you could see a lot of playing time from Jonas. But if he doesn't, it could be really quick. I think the minutes volatility on Valanciunas is going to be really, really high. And then, as you alluded to, the lack of kind of multiple defenders, ball pressures without Najee Marshall really does put a little bit of pressure on how the lineups could work. You could see more Dyson Daniels and Jose Alvarado as a result. As much as I love Devontae Graham, it's probably a tougher spot for him to get a lot of playing time, given the combination of the size for Toronto and given the combination of needs for what New Orleans has going tonight. Okay,
Trey will be bombing a lot of threes today. I'll add that as well.
Trey Lyles, doubtful again for Sacramento. Any rotation notes there to consider for the Kings?
No, it was pretty much straight Chimezie Metu back at 5, and they went a little bit smaller because they had some major issues containing Devin Booker, and they were trying to throw a little bit more defensive versatility with some Terrence Davis. We saw De'Aaron Fox get a little bit of overlap. Also, De'Aaron Fox got doghoused again. I could talk about that after we talk through injury stuff. But Monk picked up a big role, really aggressive driving. But yeah, would expect Chimezie Metu to pick up all the non-Sabonis minutes there. Against Miles Turner, I don't think you need, Holmes or anybody like that. I think Sabonis is going to play quite a bit. But worth noting, too, Casey Okpala was, I believe, first sub. And then they just went away from it entirely as Terrence Davis, Monk especially, and really picked up those minutes. And Keegan Murray, off to a great start, couldn't get minutes. Had trouble defensively. Suns kind of targeted him a little bit with Booker. Just to get to Fox really quick. Got dogged house, man. For Fox to get 29 minutes in a really close game at home against the Suns when you're playing well is interesting. And he got asked about that after the game, Mike Brown did, and said, they were like, oh, is he dealing with something? Does he have bumps and bruises? I think was the term. And he's like, everyone has bumps and bruises. So he's saying, I read that as like, nope, he's just as healthy as everyone else is. You got to play defense. If you're not playing defense, I'm going to sit you down right next to me or next to my assistant coaches, and they're going to tell you how to play defense. So against Halliburton, who is just on fire as a passer, last 3 games, 81 potentials, 0 turnovers, just completely tearing it up as a passer, who also has, I believe the quote was, no remorse for anybody on the Kings front office for trading him away. First game in Sacramento. He is my matchups cover boy today. So I'm very excited for what Tyrese Halliburton can do in a revenge game. First one at Sacramento. He played against Sacramento in Indiana last year.
I'm excited to watch it as well. There will be a social clip going up in a little, probably after the show, from our account talking a little bit more about that. But man, everybody was been super excited about the Kings all year. Kings are back. The Kings are back. Here comes Tyrese Halliburton into town with the Indiana Pacers, who have a better record than the Sacramento Kings this year and are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference currently, all behind the strong play of Tyrese Halliburton. Whoopsie, maybe made a mistake. All right, other notes, probables and returns. Ayo Dosunmu, probable knee soreness. The Bulls do have a lot of depth at the guard spot, so it's notable that there's paths to Ayo's minutes being limited here. Any other notes on that?
Yeah, just notable that he's lost minutes in a couple spots to Kobe White. And other guys as well. We saw Patrick Williams was the guy who kind of got hit a little bit last time, but Will just takes a little bit off the top as far as ceiling with the injury, and then adds a lower floor, because if he's not 100% against a team where if you're not 100%, the Suns are going to really go after you. So just something I wanted to know, because 22 minutes wasn't in too much of foul trouble, and they just went to Caruso more and those guys. So he's he was creating all the buzz. If Winky's listening, and he really let me have it for being low on Ayo. Who's I guess not laughing now.
Everybody's crying when it comes to the Bulls. Although they did get a nice win in Utah. All right. Other probable tags, LeBron and AD both get the probable tag. Pat Beverly returns from suspension here, and I think that's the bigger note. Is we've seen Dennis Schroeder move into the starting lineup of late. What are your thoughts on how the rotation looks like with Beverly back in the mix, and what do you think happens to Dennis Schroeder tonight?
I think they start Beverly. I could talk about the Blazers who are on a back-to-back in a second after that. Donovan Ham wouldn't commit to it. I don't think Schroeder played that well. He was out there and really got lit up defensively when the Pacers made their run. He lost guys a couple times, so I think they need another ball pressure guy, especially with the way Anthony Simons is playing. And you really want to disrupt Anthony Simons with physicality. So I think they would start Beverly, essentially in Schroeder's spot. Schroeder would get kind of pushed down into I guess you could call it like a none plus role. And then taking a little bit of ceiling off Austin Reeves, who's played pretty well, is one of they're basically their seventh man and has been just filling the gaps on how they want to play defensively, and with some spacing, he shot the lights out as well. So really important piece. So I'd expect Schroeder to be kind of moved down if Beverly does start. Either way, his mate's going to come way down. After that, LeBron lost ball handling. He only had 10 potentials in the last game. A lot of he would get a lot of pin downs to get going. He wasn't bringing up the ball as much. It was very odd to see LeBron not kind of just be such a dominant part of the offensive structure in the last game. But Andrew Nembhard actually guarded him pretty well. Just want to note that too.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to assume that going forward with all this ball handling that they have with Schroeder, with Westbrook, to a lesser extent, Kendrick Nunn, I don't expect him to be in the rotation, but Beverly, Reeves, like all these guys can handle the ball fine. I would expect that LeBron's not bringing the ball up as much, right? Like save those miles and that energy, let him just kind of jog down the floor and get into position, then set the offense. Wouldn't be surprising to me. And then the last note you had, do you want to talk about Portland on the second night of back-to-back? Did we get any injury update or information? I don't believe.
Yeah, we're probably not going to get that for a little bit.
Okay.
I just want to note the minutes because, they played this game. They really wanted this game. I think Simon's got pulled up. I think he got 43 minutes last night. My computer's going a little bit slower. Come on, buddy.
Yeah, they had Jeremy Grant foul out.
Grant fouled out. He would have been playing huge minutes as well. So, Simon's 43 minutes. Big volume. They were pretty physical with him. We've seen him have a couple injuries this season. Billups talked about coming home and then going back on the road for the back-to-back. This was a couple games ago, so just keep an eye out on that. I think this is just be a game that okay, it sucks. If considering all the injuries we've had to Dame, Simons, Nurk, I think they'll be happy to just drop this game, go back home, and get Dame back over the weekend, and just try to play like they were before. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're sitting guys today.
It also explains why it's taken so long for Gary Payton to get back with the return to competition reconditioning, because if they're going to ask these guys to play 40 a night, it does take some time to build back up. But Payton's had that tag for like 2 weeks. It's just been ridiculous. All right, Raptors back to their original stars tonight. What do you think they do in the starting lineup? Do you think that was a one-off? They played well, so I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Nurse had said that the reason why they did that, where they brought Scotty off the bench, was to basically break up the guys all returning at the same time. And he noted that they did this at one point last year, and he did not like how it looks. So I'm definitely expecting Scotty to start. Scotty called it, quote, fun to come off the bench. However, talked about the Pelicans and Valanciunas and Zion, and maybe needing another post defender. I wouldn't be surprised if Gary Trent Jr. comes off the bench. So that would be Thad's spot. So just something to keep an eye on there. Gary Trent Jr. a little bit in hot water. So definitely keep an eye on that. But definitely expecting Scotty to start for sure.
All right. The Clippers also on the second night of back-to-back. They did play Musa Diabate and Jason Preston last night. But the rotation didn't expand a ton. It still was, I think it was still like 10 guys. They also let that second unit like run throughout the whole fourth quarter. So minutes didn't get super high on most of their main guys. I wouldn't have too many concerns about them tonight. Do you have any concerns? It is the Clippers and they haven't filed.
Yeah. Sorry, my computer just lagged. Hope you heard me okay. Little bit. Zubac's lost minutes down the stretch. I think that's something to keep an eye on. He had a back wrap on the bench. This is somewhat normal for him, but considering how they, kind of rested so many people on the front end, I definitely think that's something to watch there. But we'll see. It's the Clippers, so you never feel too comfortable. Definitely expecting John Wall to return. Worth noting, Reggie Jackson had a scary fall. He looked like he was out of it on the bench before half. So definitely keep an eye on Reggie Jackson popping up on the injury report here.
All right. That'll do it for today's Established Run NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. As always, want to make sure to support the people who are supporting us here. This show is brought to you by our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts running for money, in addition to many formats of NFL contests still running for huge cash prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em and you're an Established Run subscriber, in-season subscribers can use our tool to compare ETR projections to their Pick'em game. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. If you are interested in joining us behind the paywall tonight, it'll be myself and GPP bro Gary Hartman at 5 o'clock Eastern walking through this entire slate. It's really less of a walking through. It's more of a light sprint through a 13-game slate as we try to cover each and every game within an hour. If you are uninterested in subscribing and getting paid content from us, at least support us with your clicks. You can subscribe to this channel, get notifications whenever we go live, and you can also support this specific episode by pressing, holding, or smashing that like button. As always, we got to feed the algorithm to feed our families. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.